CNN political commentator Ron Brownstein, Rick Tyler, national spokesperson for Cruz for president. We also have with us John Avalon, CNN political analyst. Good to have all of you with us. And Rick, I want to start with you. We just heard from Senator Cruz about this threat to sue based on his claim that the senator is ineligible to be president. We know that your campaign believes that it's an invalid argument, but what do you think the impact is of Trump making this argument over and over? Do you think it's resonating in South Carolina?
Well, so far it's been zero. I mean, we won the Iowa caucuses. We came in third in a blue state in New Hampshire, and we expect to do well in South Carolina. But look, I have to fundamentally disagree with the analysis I just heard. Ted Cruz South Carolina, while we want to win South Carolina, is not crucial to our going forward. We have now dominated the conservative lane. That lane is clear for us, so we are the conservative candidate in this race. The establishment is a muddle. The establishment has not figured out who it's going to put up against the conservative candidate, and I think Marco Rubio has a lot to prove in this debate, because he said in the last debate that's not going to happen again. So we'll see if it's not going to happen again. And so there's a real struggle of who's going to be the establishment candidate, whether it will be Rubio, whether it will be Bush or John Kasich. But that's where the focus will be tonight.
John, as soon as I heard Rick say we have dominated the establishment lane, I wanted to respond with, but polls show. We know the polls have been wrong up to this point, so I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to ask you, is there still this fight now between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz for this conservative lane? And is there now a leader in the establishment lane? Do we have front runners in either column?
No. I mean, one thing I think the Cruz campaign would acknowledge, if in their lane analysis of the Republican electorate, there's an evangelical lane, there's a Tea Party lane, there's a perhaps movement conservative lane, and a quote-unquote establishment center-right lane. The Cruz campaign has done a good job, to their credit, of nailing down evangelicals with endorsements. But Donald Trump's support has dug into evangelicals. It's broader than any one lane, and that's something that skewed the analysis. Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, John Kasich are all fighting for that center-right lane, but that's a strong position to be in. And South Carolina is a state that is too easily stereotyped as being what it was 20 years ago. So this is a big debate. This is a big fight. Rubio has the most ground to gain. He has the endorsement of South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. But the Cruz campaign has done a good job nailing down evangelicals, but they've got to nail the larger SEC primary coming up throughout the South. And it's not simply enough to nail down evangelicals to translate that to a majority win.
Ron, the last poll for South Carolina came out before New Hampshire, before Iowa, the last major poll. How tight is this race?
No, I think the polling has been pretty consistent with Donald Trump in a double-digit lead in South Carolina. And, South Carolina is a conservative state. It's a heavily evangelical state like Iowa, but it has historically been a state where the establishment and order in the Republican race have kind of reasserted itself. If you go back from 1980 2008, every contested Republican race, the front runner lost either Iowa or New Hampshire. There was Ronald Reagan in 1980, H.W. Bush in 88, Bob Dole in 96, George Bush 2000, McCain 2008. They lost either Iowa or New Hampshire. Then they won South Carolina and won the nomination. South Carolina was the place where kind of order was restored in the Republican race. In 2012, it veered off in a different direction, with Newt Gingrich winning and becoming the first person in the modern era to win the state without winning the nomination. And you do wonder, I mean, this is where where many in the establishment were hoping to kind of make their stand. It does not seem plausible that either Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush is going to win this. It is a Trump-Cruz fight, and I think Trump has the upper hand because Trump is cutting into that evangelical vote, particularly blue-collar evangelicals, as John noted, whereas Ted Cruz's support in Iowa and New Hampshire hasn't extended far enough beyond evangelicals to truly threaten Trump, I think.
All right, so Rick, let me test your theory here. If Senator Cruz has indeed dominated the conservative lane, would it be fair to expect him not just to do well in South Carolina, but in a state in which national security is so important? 2/3 of the GOP electorate considers themselves to be conservative Christians. To expect Senator Cruz to win the South Carolina primary, is that fair?
Listen, I'm not going to predict whether we'll win or not. I think we'll do very well. What's going to count in South Carolina is ground game. Someone who's strong in national security and foreign policy, and Senator Cruz is certainly that. By the way, he voted for the 215 appropriations bill to fund the budget of defense budget, which Marco Rubio says that he didn't vote for. But the irony of Marco Rubio's assertion there is that Marco Rubio himself didn't vote for the 2015 appropriations bill to put money into the defense. So that's going to be interesting. But look, I think what Ron is saying is right, and I also think it is down between Cruz and Trump. And going forward into March 1st, it's going to be important. You're going to have three things: a candidate with a message, you got to have organization, you got to have money. And there's only two people left in the race now that have the money to go on, and that is Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. You can't
I think we're forgetting Jeb Bush here, and I got to wrap this segment, but I know you guys are with us for the hour, and I want to talk about the Bush love that I saw when I was there in South Carolina. If the love for the Bush family is strong enough to outweigh the concern that so many have about politicians who promise and promise, as we saw at one of the events, a man who said, listen, I love the Bush family, I'm just tired of promises. So this person is a Trump supporter. We'll have that for you coming up at the bottom of the hour. Ron, Rick, John, thank you all. We'll continue the conversation.